Hello, so for this chapter, we are going to discuss more about visual analytics, different calculations, and interactivity of Tableau Desktop. What I'm showing you right now is an infographic of various charts and graphs the Tableau Desktop offers. Each of them has its own purpose, so we can actually explore them here in Tableau Desktop. Like here in Show Me, where we can make use of different charts or graphs that is suitable for our data requirements. But each of them also has their own, let's say, use case or the different things they require. And we will be discussing more of that in this video. Now, if we were to focus on stacked bar charts, heat maps, and tree maps, here is another infographic. So, for stacked bar charts, it is used when you want to show the total and the composition of each category. So, we need to have a dimension, a measure, and another dimension. Basically, two dimensions for a heat map. If you want to show patterns or intensity across two categorical dimensions, then we need two dimensions again and a measure. And for the tree map, if you want to display hierarchical data using different sizes and colors, we may need a dimension and two measures. So, as I've said earlier, each of these charts has its own requirement. So you have to drag a specific dimension or a measure depending on the requirement, like you can drag them in the column or in the row. Now let's talk more about filters. So we have our quick filter or the show filter. So, of course, when we have our data field in either the column or the row, and they want to showcase only the data that suits our needs or our reporting objectives, we have to drag in that specific data field or column inside the filter section. The purpose of this is so that users can have control over what data they want. But before that, you should actually choose what kind of format you need for the filter, because it could be a drop-down, a slider, and more. So, how to use? You have to click a field in the filter shelf, and you click Show Filter. Then, this allows you to filter by different information you need, like region, product, or date, depending on your data source. So, let's have an example. So let's say I want to filter a country. I will track this in the filter section. And then, let's say, I want to filter all first. Click OK. Then click it and use the Show Filter. Let's say I want to change this to a drop-down list or custom list. For the custom list, you can actually type in values, but the drop-down list is actually much more convenient, and I think it's cleaner compared to other formats. Next is the context filter. So what's the purpose of the context filter first? It's actually a filtering layer that other filters depend on because there are instances where you will have a lot of filters. And then we don't know which one the report needs to prioritize first. So we have here a context filter. This is usually useful for top-end filters and when we want to optimize the performance. Because, from experience, when I try to connect to a very heavy data source, the performance is usually slow due to the many calculated fields. I used advanced calculations like LOD expressions. So, I might want to use context filters to help me optimize my performance and show accurate results if I'm also trying to bring in a lot of data. We also have the relative date field of the filter. The purpose of this is to filter dates dynamically based on the current date, like when you want to get the last, how many years, how many quarters, months, weeks, and days, and so on. So let's have an example here. So let's say I want to filter by due date. I want to have the relative filter for this. So once you drag this into the filter section, you can choose a relative date. Click Next, and you can choose which suits your objectives. So let's say for this report, I want to get the data for the last 3 months. I could click this one and just revise this based on what I need. 3 months, 6 months, and so on. Then click OK. Next is the parameter. So for me, parameter is really important because based on my experience, I connect to multiple data sources. And let's say among those multiple data sources, they have like a data fielder column that contains the same information. So instead of adding a lot of custom filters, I can use the parameter. So in my dashboard, if I type in something in the parameter with the required format, like a string, a Boolean, or whatever, then the answer or the data that they want to run should reflect in all the other data sources or sheets, or the entire dashboard itself. So it's like a drop-down menu or slider. It controls what to filter, what measure to display, or what number to calculate. So again, the common uses of a parameter could also be that's using top, and like top 10 products, top 10, or top 20 customers of the year, and so on. You can also enter a specific threshold if you want to get those products that allow a business to gain a profit of more than $5,000 or $20,000. And you can also use a parameter to change reference lines on charts. How to use a parameter. To create the parameter, we need to go to the data pane, right-click, create a parameter, and then use it in the calculation. And then we show it in the parameter control, and we use it in filters, bins, or a reference line. For a quick sample or overview, usually click here. We have to create a parameter. So, of course, you can name your parameter, and like whatever you want to name it. And then, for the data type, we have float, integer, string, Boolean, date. All of these data types, I believe I discussed in the previous videos. So yeah, for you to experience or to learn more about parameters, you can use this, especially if you're connecting to multiple data sources and you want to have a single search field or search button. Then you can input whatever value. Like, let's say I want to input the string, and I put here the name of the customer, let's say Bob. Then, in different data sources, like my first data source is about the sales, and second data source is about the performance. So Bob's information will reflect all those data sources, depending also on what data fields you filter or you've dragged into your columns or rows. We have calculated fields. Usually we use if, case, zn, and date functions. So, the if statement is actually widely used in different programming languages. So it's a conditional logic like the Excel ifs, and the syntax is as easy as an example. If sales are more than 1,000, and they put high, else low, end. If you're familiar with this type of logic, we can also make use of else if. So the syntax would be if, else if, else, and then end. Next is the key statement. It is actually an alternative to if, so the syntax is more for SQL, which can also be used in Tableau desktop. We have one field, which is the region. We can do the syntax like case region when east and then rename it to zone A. When west, rename it to zone B, else others. And then it's actually cleaner than the nested ifs when checking only one specific field. But if you want to compare a lot of fields, then it's best to use an if statement. And we have Zn, which returns 0 if the value is null. This is particularly useful when you want to create formulas or calculations. Let's say my profit is null. So what if I want to apply a calculation and my profit is null? Of course, it will return a blank value or perhaps an error value. So it's important to convert all those values to 0 to avoid blanks for the charts. The date functions are used to manipulate and format date values. So we actually have different date functions, or calculations, such as dateDiff, dateTrunc, and dateName, which you can further explore when you use Tableau Desktop. The thing I use the most, when I want to calculate the dates between two different dates, I mainly use the dateDiff function. So you can input all of these functions inside the calculated field when you create one. Next is the level of detail expression, particularly fixed LODs, include and exclude. LOD expressions allow you to control the level of aggregation, and you have three types: the fix, include, and exclude. Let's focus first on the fixed LOD expression. It locks a calculation at a specific dimension. So here, in the example, we have here a fixed region, column sum sales. It is actually the main format that we should use inside Tableau Desktop because the fixed calculation completes and aggregates using only, or it is limited to only the specified dimensions. We can input a lot of dimensions here, like fixed region, date, and customer name, depending on your requirements. So the use case of this is to compare each region's sales to total sales per region. The next LOD expression would be include. It adds dimension to the calculation. So the include function aggregates a specific dimension and view dimensions. Here, in the example, we want to find the average sales per customer even when viewing category totals. Next is the exclude function. It removes dimensions from the calculations. It could be an aggregate excluding the specified dimension. And in the example here, this can actually show the overall category sales while displaying subcategory rows. So there you have the three fixed expressions. It will actually be more useful or understandable once you apply it, when you create the report that you need. Next, you have table calculations surrounding total, percent of total, and ranking. So we have different table calculations, and we have here the infographic. We can make use of index to numbered rows or columns. You can also use rank, sum, percentile, and all the other calculations. We use table calculations, and you want full control over our formulas, like when you try to build something using running sum or window average. So we can create this favorite calculation field. But you also have a very easy step to do this instead. We can also make use of quick table calculations. But if you want full control, then you can create the formulas in the calculated field. To get quick table calculations after you drag your measure inside the text, you can actually manipulate the table calculations that you want. Okay, let's have one example. This is just an example. So the rate I will drag it here, then click this one, and we have here the quick table calculations. Next are the different actions: filter action, highlight action, and URL action. This is one of my favorite actions or things when I create a dashboard because it's so easy to highlight specific data when you want it to reflect in another data source or sheet. So the filter action filter is another sheet based on a selectable value. So we can actually get the filter or all the other actions here in our worksheet. Click Worksheet, Actions, and then we can add actions. So we have a filter highlight URL, and we also have other options. So you can try to manage for filter action. The use case of this one is when you want to click a specific field in a chart or graph, or let's say just a simple report, and you will only want to see the relevant values. Then, this filter action is very good for your requirement or useful. Next is the highlight action. The main purpose of the highlight action is when you try to hover a specific data point from a sheet and then hover on that section. All the associated information I want will also be highlighted in another sheet, if you were to put them in one dashboard. This is great for visual guidance while keeping the full data visible, because you don't want to filter only one specific data point, but you want to have all the data. We just want to check how some information is displayed by hovering over that spot. And we also have the URL action. This is very useful for external links, documents, or system integration. So if I click on a data, like in this example, click a customer name that it can open their profile on your CRM, or you can add a link that will direct you to another page where you want to see more information about the data you clicked. So that's actually the summary, or a quick overview of the visuals, analytics, and actions of Tableau Desktop.